Welcome back to Misfit TV, the channel where we bring entertainment and sports directly to you. And this is the Buckets Only podcast. I'm your host, Jay. This is my friend, Jake. Jake, how are you doing today, my man?
Very good, very good. We're watching some basketball. How about you?
Man, it's been live. We had our first full day. We're in the middle of our second day right now when we're recording this, and the playoffs are off to a hot start. We already have controversy. It's ridiculous, but that's not what we're talking about today. We don't do any haterade on this podcast. We're all about trying to find the bright side of things. So what we're gonna do today on this episode is we're simply just going to take a look at a couple of guys or teams that we're really keeping a close eye on during this first round of the NBA playoffs. Whether it be for good or for bad is dependent on, what the team is, where they stand right now, and unfortunately, kind of how the players play over the next couple of days. So, Jake, who's the first player or team that you are keeping your eye on?
I really got my eye on Jason Tatum and the Celtics. They beat the Sixers yesterday. Not by much. I thought they were going to win by more, considering the Sixers are obviously without Simmons. But Gordon Hayward is out for the next 4 weeks, which is a shame. This guy can't catch a break. He's just has injury after injury, and he's a really solid player when he's healthy. But it'll be interesting to see because I think he was actually starting, so they could slide maybe Robert Williams into the starting lineup and go with a big matchup to match up with Joel Embiid and Al Horford. Or they could still use Tatum at the 4 and go small ball for 1 through 3 and bring Marcus Smart in. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do with that. I don't think it'll be as much of a problem for them in the first round because the Sixers are very shorthanded without their second best player, in my opinion. But I think that down the road, if they don't have Hayward, maybe not even for the next round, if when they play either Brooklyn or Toronto, but if they have to play Milwaukee and without a key member of their team, I think they're going to really struggle.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Boston right now, it almost felt like they won handily. I mean, Joel Embiid started, 5 for 5 and then seemed to have slowed down in terms of his possessions for the rest of the game. It was one of those games, honestly, that felt like you kind of felt as though it was almost going a little too well for the Celtics, and then the Gordon Hayward situation takes place. And it was really a tough look because when I was trying to see where the injury really happened, it was within a scuffle underneath the basket for a rebound. Like that's a typical, NBA style possession to come off of a miss, try to corral for a rebound, gang rebound, a lot of people underneath the basket. And he just got the short end of the stick. And to hear that he's going to be out for 4 weeks, condolences to him. Obviously, this kind of ends his time pretty much in the bubble in terms of being active on the court. Unless, of course, the
Unless
Celtics
they
make a
make a
deep
deep
run.
playoff run.
Yeah, unless the Celtics make a deep run. But it's one of those things that, like I said, it almost felt too good to be true that the Celtics were, winning so handily. It felt like from start to finish of the game. And unfortunately, it kind of was because Gordon Hayward had to reap the unfortunates of that.
And you also like the Celtics are already like they're healthy. That most of their guys are playing, but like their guys are banged up. I think Kemba has like a lingering knee problem that he's had since before they got to the bubble. I think Jaylen Brown may have tweaked his ankle yesterday. Or it was like a hard pick or something where he's apparently going to be feeling a bit sore throughout the series. So I'm really interested to see what happens with the Celtics and Sixers series.
I guess a good way to segue is stick in the East, and I'm gonna go with the Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis Antetokounmpo specifically. Of course, when we're recording this, we're coming off of the Magic stunning them in the first game and stealing game 1, which I don't think a lot of us saw coming. And of course, the Magic actually did this last year to the Raptors and caught the whole league by storm for a cool 24 hours before they got humbled again. So, not something to put too much stock into because we've seen the Magic catch a team slipping in the first round of the playoffs before. But my biggest thing when it comes to Giannis and the Bucks is they've not really performed well in the bubble. They didn't really play well and didn't beat any of the teams that are in the top 5 in terms of the playoffs in either conference throughout their time in the eight seeding games. They haven't really given us anything, to desire from them, and they pretty much put the question back in our mind of, can Giannis actually win a championship with a supporting cast like the one he has, where Chris Middleton, although great, underrated player in my book, may not be the kind of all-star wingman that a Giannis Antetokounmpo needs. And I just really wonder, and I've started to gain these questions over the last couple of weeks, and Jake, maybe you can answer this for me. Are the Bucks legitimately a title contending team, or are they a team that has reaped the benefits of having the 27th or 28th worst strength of schedule in the league, leading to 56 wins this year, and having the MVP on their team playing in the Eastern Conference, where he is, I wouldn't say by far the best player in the conference, but I would say he's definitely got a leg up on whoever the next best player is. Are the Bucks real or what?
I think based on their past play in their past recent play, because dating back to before the bubble, they're 4-10 in their last 14 games or something like that. Like, they were not doing well before the hiatus. They have not come out well and played well since the hiatus ended. Overall, yeah, I think they're a title contender given that they are in the Eastern Conference and they have a much easier path to the finals. They don't have to go through LeBron and AD or Kawhi and PG or potentially Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. They don't have to go through any of that. The biggest star power that they might have to go through is if they play Boston with Jason Tatum and Kemba Walker, or if they have to play Toronto, who I'm not ready to call Pascal Siakam a superstar. He's a really good player. He's young. I think he will develop into a superstar, but I just don't see that stopping Giannis on the Bucks. So yeah, I see them contending and being final contenders. But if I'm Milwaukee and I see that this year isn't it, if I'm a fan, I'm secretly hoping that they exit early in the playoffs. If it doesn't look like they're going to win the finals, because there's trade rumors surrounding Giannis, and it's if Giannis doesn't think he can win a title, why would he stay? You know, why would he stay and play for Milwaukee? They're a small market team, so it's not like they're really going to have the cap space or they're going to have the glitz and glamour necessary to sign a superstar to pair with Giannis. And I feel like if they make a deep playoff run and they don't win, it's Giannis will think, okay, well, we can't win. But if they exit early, a lot of the blame is going to fall on Giannis. If they don't beat Orlando in a 4-game series, they're not going to blame the team as a whole. They're going to say, well, Giannis, this is your team. You lost to the 8 seed Magic. What went wrong? And so I think it'll make it harder for him to leave.
I mean, like you said before, there's definitely a lot of questions surrounding this team, and that's kind of the unfortunate thing. You brought up the trade rumors, and of course, he and Victor Oladipo over the last couple of days have been associated with potentially being coaxed into maybe sign and trade with the Miami Heat, or Giannis has been brought up with, dare I say, the Golden State Warriors a couple times over the last couple of years, specifically the last 2, and it's kind of important that you bring up his pending free agency, because 2022 is dangerous. That whole summer, pretty much everybody we saw get signed this past summer, they're up, which means it's going to be a gang of superstars looking for a place to link up, do whatever it is they can to build, the next dynastic team, wherever that may be. And of course, Giannis is at the top of that list. And unfortunately, Milwaukee does not have a lot of time to work around that. Chris Middleton could continue to be a perennial all-star player that doesn't get the type of all-star respect, but I don't think that just rerunning it back a million times is going to hit. And unfortunately, like you said, they're running out of time. One team that I feel like has even less time to me personally, in terms of who I'm keeping my eyes on transitioning to the Western Conference, is the Lakers. You said something really interesting off camera, and I'm going to let you share it in a second. But they have a very, very dangerous Blazers team coming in, basically playoff tested these last 8 games the way they had to go 6-2 just to be able to make it into the playoff, let alone now be, the AC taking on the Los Angeles Lakers with LeBron James and AD. This Lakers team has not been impressive at all throughout the entire bubble. This does not look like the team that we saw before the hiatus. It's only getting worse with guys like, of course, missing Avery Bradley drastically. It feels like Rajon Rondo is a maybe in terms of if he gets any run. I mean, we'll see. Of course, we're recording this on the day of Game 1. We'll see if he gets any run in Game 1. I doubt it, but we'll really see where he stands in Game 2. But they're still gonna have to work him in. This team, like I said before, it just kind of lacks something. And I feel like with the fact that they're catching Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Gary Trent Jr., a Carmelo Anthony who has hit a league high 6, clutch threes over the last 8 games. I mean, they're catching a really hot Blazers team, and they haven't given me much of a reason to feel like they're going to win the series. But you have a specific take on that I want you to share with everybody.
I've been saying this actually for like a while, like since they came out with the 22 team format. It felt like that was designed so that they could get the Pelicans in the playoffs. But I've been saying, like, if Portland makes it, watch out, because Dame didn't show up and didn't play those. He said, if we don't have a chance at the playoffs, I'm not playing. And they are in the playoffs now, and I get playoff LeBron is a beast. He can go crazy. He can go off on any night. But when you look at that Portland team, they got guys that can slow down Anthony Davis and that can slow down LeBron. They have Nurkic and Whiteside, who they can take turns guarding AD. I don't know if anyone really has a true answer to LeBron.
Okay, there you go. I was
Because
like,
I mean, I don't know who you're gonna put Carmelo Anthony on LeBron. Like so LeBron is still gonna go off regardless. But when I look at Portland, the Lakers don't have any answer for Dame and CJ. Maybe they had a little bit of an answer for Avery Bradley, but I'm a Clippers fan, and he was on the Clippers for a good chunk of last season. Him not being there is overhyped. I think people think that he has a bigger effect on that team than he really does. And I just don't see, I mean, because you can't put LeBron on Dame for 40 minutes a night. You can't match up their minutes because LeBron, to save energy for offense, he sacrifices on defense. He does it in the playoffs sometimes. On important possessions, yeah, you can expect to see LeBron on Dame. But when I look at Dame in the postseason and I see the supporting cast around LeBron and AD, I don't see anyone that can stop Dame from going off for 50 points a night. He's already averaging close to 40 in the bubble. And that's like the Blazers have been in the playoffs, like you said, since the beginning of the 8 games. They knew what the stakes were. They were the 9 seed, already down 4 games. They already climbed out of that hole, snagged the 8 seed. Then they already had a playoff game, or a play-in game actually, against the Grizzlies where they won. Like, I just don't see the Lakers being able to stop Lillard or CJ McCollum too.
I mean, the other thing is, and no one really wants to bring it up because at the end of the day, we're talking about LeBron James here, but LeBron James has never been tested like this by an A seed. And I think that's something to really take into consideration, because this is LeBron James's first postseason as part of the Western Conference. So this is going to have a lot to do with some of the hypothetical stories or hypothetical takes a lot of people have made over the last 8 years when LeBron James was making his significant runs to the postseason in the East, is if you were in the Western Conference, you wouldn't have never made it this far, and things of that nature. And I think LeBron James actually said this, was that the Portland Trail Blazers are not a regular 8 seed. And I've been on that, that train for a little while in terms of if they make it, same as you, if they make it, they're dangerous because they were only in the position they were in because they were not healthy the majority of the season before the hiatus. At full strength with everybody clicking the way they are, yes, they have CJ with the messed up back and things like that. But they're a very inspired team right now with a lot of guys who are hitting shots. And I think the biggest thing to play off of what you said was that they don't have a single guy in the backcourt that I think can hang or hold either one of those guys in Damian Lillard or CJ McCollum, which I feel like, matching up big by big, I think Anthony Davis obviously ranks above all centers in this series. But Dame and CJ are, top 5 by themselves in the series amongst all players and are much higher than whoever the Lakers' best guard is in terms of ranking the guards in the series. So it actually looks pretty lopsided despite the Trailblazers being an 8 seed. But who else do you have in the Western Conference that you might want to take a look at?
I'm interested to see the OKC versus Houston series. It's it's kind of up in the air. Russ is expected to miss the first couple games. Um, and the Thunder have been like a fun story to follow all season. With them losing Paul George, losing Russ over the offseason, and still being, I think they're the 4th seed actually,
Mm-hmm.
the 4th or 5th. It doesn't matter without home court advantage. But I'm really interested to see if OKC can snag a couple of early games because I think once Russ comes back, it's going to be really hard for the Thunder to guard that duo. Um, but I think that if they can win a couple of the first games without Russ, and they just have to focus all their energy on Harden, I'm interested to see how that goes.
Well, I'm kind of glad that that's where you went because that's a great way to kind of like transition into my point for the final take of the episode, which is I want to see CP3 OKC version in the playoffs. This is a guy who mocked the media a few days ago about um the ESPN rankings for the team and giving them a 0.02% chance of making the postseason this year. And although I understand where he comes from in terms of they doubted us, we're going to prove you wrong. We did prove you wrong. They surely did. But what people need to remember is they were left for dead before this season started for good reason. A lot of assumptions were that CP3 would be on the trading block, which he spent a lot of the season on. Steven Adams was still, he's a 26-year-old center with a lot of, credential as a defensive player for that team as it is, who also has probably a lot of good trade value. Danilo Gallinari is a guy who, though underrated as a scorer, anybody would love to add 19 points per game to their roster. And Andre Roberson, although injured, is still an all-NBA defender when healthy, which meant that he could have potentially been shopped as well. And when you tell me that the Thunder get 6 draft picks in the offseason, along with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who else isn't? Who's not thinking they're possibly going to hit the reset button? But they didn't. They stepped in, kept everybody together, Chris Paul at the helm, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who actually I genuinely believe was the best player on this team, actually averaged more points than Chris Paul this season, despite Chris Paul being voted as the All-Star this season. Dennis Schroeder is a guy who excelled significantly off the bench, which was kind of weird considering that when he left Atlanta, his main goal was to be a part of like a contention team. And he ended up with the Thunder, and that was the exact opposite of what we thought we were going to get. And not only that, but then he also took a lesser role and thrived in it. So this is a team with Chris Paul at the helm that, Chris Paul has a really bad playoff rap. It seems like basically come second round, we already start getting our doubts. And granted, it has a lot to do with his injury history. I think a healthy Chris Paul gets them out of this series and gets the Rockets out of here in 6, potentially 7 games, depending on the circumstances.
Yeah, it almost seems foolish that we wrote them off so early. Like after they traded PG and Russ, I'm guilty of that too. I was like, oh, there's no way that they're gonna make it back to the playoffs, especially when you look at Portland as the 8 seed and even Dallas as the 7 seed, who for the Clippers is not a conventional 7 seed to play in the first round. They're not Brooklyn without Kyrie and KD and DeAndre. I'll tell you that much. Um, but I wrote them off, and I I didn't write them off as much because I do follow the Clippers, and I knew that they were getting one of the best, if not the best, young point guard in the game. Okay, probably not the best because Luka and maybe Trey, um, but Shea is going to be one of the best point guards in the league in the next couple years. His development, he can develop so quick and develop his game. He has such a high ceiling. Um, and especially learning from Chris Paul, like the point guard, like
Right.
that's gonna do wonders for him. Um, and his development last year, because if you look at the Clippers, he was able to develop with Sam Cassell and Doc Rivers, both who were decent point guards. And so I think the Thunder, like you said, I think they can win this series. It just depends on how long Russ is out.
I mean, yeah, my biggest take on all of this was obviously their ability to steal game one is going to be huge in terms of flipping the momentum for this series, because obviously you lose without having Russ on the court. That means when Russ comes back, things get a little bit more difficult, which of course affects their chances as well. I think all the guys that we talked about, all the teams that we talked about, play a significant role because of the fact that I feel like they're all in the actual championship hunt. We didn't talk about some of the teams like the Orlando who stole a game, or the Nets who stole a game, who, we're not really sure who they are come this playoff time. We talked about a lot of guys and a lot of teams who we could be seeing next round. So it's going to be great to be able to take a look over the next couple of days and see what it is that they do. But, I'm just glad that we're able to see playoff basketball, considering that, like, say 2 months ago, we weren't even sure where basketball was going to lie. And now we're over here talking about who's going to lift up the Larry O'Brien at the end of the year. So this has been a great episode, Jake. Of course, we'll keep our eye on the NBA, and we, of course, have more episodes coming down the line. Thank you, everybody, for coming and watching us today. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, all of that under the sun. And thank you so much for take care, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Let us know your playoff predictions in the comments.
Oh,
Let us know
facts.
what you think's
Yeah.
going to happen.
Excellent way to end the podcast, my dude. Drop them below. Playoff predictions. I need all fire bangers. Peace.